Alright, so you want to know what the next Bitcoin will be? Well, I have some good news. The next Bitcoin has already been found. In our last video, we discussed the relative size of Bitcoin in an attempt to estimate its potential for growth. Is Bitcoin big? But I'll be honest, the true purpose of that video was to put a dampener on one of the most dangerous questions that newbies arrive at. What's going to be the next Bitcoin? But what makes this question so dangerous, and why don't more people know the answer to it? By the end of this video, you'll have an answer to 3 different questions. Firstly, what is the next Bitcoin? Secondly, why is that question so dangerous? And thirdly, why don't more people know the answer? CFB. No, before you get excited, that's not the name of the next Bitcoin, but the name of the driving force behind the desire to find it. Let me explain. Whoa. That was a glitch, a malfunction, something that computers oftentimes do. But humans glitch too. Not in the sense that we tweak out and start making dodgy noises. Humans aren't computers, right? Well, actually, we're constantly computing probabilities and various interpretations of the world around us. And sometimes those interpretations and predictions are wrong. In fact, we're always doing this, and often for seemingly random reasons. But amongst all of these glitches, some patterns do emerge. There are these recurring and cross-cultural human glitches that we call cognitive biases, and I can make you experience one right now. Which one of these 2 center circles is larger? The one on the right or the one on the left? The one on the right, right? Nah, they're the same size. This is CFB, a human glitch called cognitive framing bias. Here's the internet for the explanation. Framing is when someone makes a decision because of the way information is presented to them, rather than based on just the facts. In other words, if somebody sees the same facts presented in a different way, they're likely to come to a different conclusion about the information. Investors may pick investments differently depending on how the opportunity is presented to them. The center circle on the right was presented to you as larger than all of the circles immediately surrounding it, and thus you assumed that it was larger than the one on the left, which is presented to you as smaller than all of the circles immediately surrounding it. And just like this image, Bitcoin in the mainstream is also presented with very misleading context. It's presented in the context of the crypto industry, which is quite literally a whole industry dedicated to trying to reinvent Bitcoin. Putting Bitcoin in this context is kind of like putting Charlie Chaplin in a Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest, which they did, and he lost. Unfortunately, a vast portion of public opinion currently has Bitcoin losing the Bitcoin lookalike contest, even at times placing the actual technology itself as behind individual companies such as Ethereum, often by citing Bitcoin's inability to support NFTs or claiming that it's too slow or something along those lines. Neither of which are true, by the way, but we'll get to that towards the end of the video. Yet still, Bitcoin's losing position remains firmly etched into far too large a portion of public opinion. But why? In most cases, people don't feel comfortable parting ways with hundreds of pounds in exchange for but a portion of a Bitcoin. They believe that Bitcoin is too expensive for them and thus look for a cheap cryptocurrency to invest in. This way, they can exchange hundreds of pounds for thousands of their chosen cryptocurrency. But that does make me wonder, why wouldn't you then just take all of the pounds that you have remaining and exchange them for Indian rupees, since they're so much cheaper than pounds? That way you can exchange hundreds of pounds for thousands of rupees. Bargain, right? I mean, it's quite literally the same logic. If holding cryptocurrencies that are cheaper per unit is a better financial decision, then surely holding national currencies that are cheaper per unit is also a better financial decision. Saying I want to hold Bitcoin but it's just too expensive is the logical equivalent of saying I want to hold pounds but they're just too expensive. People would never say this, of course. So why do they say it about Bitcoin? Well, I guess for one, there's nobody spending millions in advertising budgets trying to convince you that the rupee has 100x potential, or that it's going to the moon. But their favorite cryptocurrency project does exactly that. So really, the search for the next Bitcoin is a dish best cooked with a healthy dose of cognitive framing bias and a pinch of opportunistic marketers. A few common beliefs exist amongst those who believe they have found the next Bitcoin in an alternative cryptocurrency. 1. Bitcoin lacks innovation. 2. Bitcoin is slow. And 3, Bitcoin is not scalable. Surprisingly though, the latter two propositions, although the most consequential if true, are the least mentioned. Rather, the idea that Bitcoin somehow lacks innovation seems to be the primary talking point of such people. In 2017, for instance, it was all about utility tokens that could do backflips and somersaults and the rest of it, but could never stick the landing. And in 2021, it was all about NFTs, where putting digital collectibles on the Ethereum blockchain was the next big thing, until it wasn't. At this point, most of the public considered Bitcoin to be quite boring compared to the magical ape picture status signaling land of Ethereum. Except those ape pictures, the ones that are valuable because they're on the blockchain, were never actually on the blockchain. The only thing that was actually on the blockchain was just links to those images. Not only this, but the network failed to handle the demand so badly that there was often cases of people spending thousands of pounds on transaction fees for a single transaction that was worth like half of that. And the craziest part about it all is that they called that a success. I mean, you can apply a thick coat of innovation to any product as much as you want, but if the product doesn't work, was that really innovation or just mental gymnastics that sounded cool to people who thought you were smart? And to say that Bitcoin isn't as scalable as the alternatives, even after the big dog Ethereum couldn't handle the slightest bit of public interest before the faster, cheaper, and more scalable alternative to Bitcoin was seeing thousands of pounds in transaction fees for the purchase of NFTs that weren't even stored on the blockchain, is actually quite hilarious. And even though the user experience was so terrible, it was the fact that you could at least simulate the experience of trading images on a blockchain had so many convinced that Bitcoin was behind in the technology and the innovation department. So if people are looking for innovation, speed, and scalability when they're searching for the next Bitcoin, then where will they find it? Well, let's do a thought experiment to find out. This is Bob. Here's some cool facts about Bob. Bob believes that NFTs will be the future of digital ownership, and he also believes that immutable data storage, smart contracts, and micropayments will be hugely important. Bob isn't going to look to Bitcoin. He'll likely look for the latest blockchain cloud storage project, and then just focus on Ethereum or something for the NFTs and smart contracts, despite its obvious drawbacks. But Bob hasn't been paying attention to Bitcoin since he first researched it back in 2021. Back then, he discovered that NFTs and complex smart contracts weren't possible on Bitcoin. So he felt that he had seen enough and declared that it wasn't suitable for his vision of a decentralized future. And so he hasn't looked at Bitcoin since. But that's the thing, the Bitcoin that he knew and learned about back then is not the Bitcoin that exists today. Today there are over 1,000 NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, and they're actually on the blockchain too, unlike the majority of Ethereum NFTs, which are just stored on IPFS or cloud storage somewhere. It's also used for micropayments much more since the advancement and development of the Lightning Network has become much more prominent. I personally use Bitcoin to buy coffee every now and then. Also, when it comes to immutable data storage, you can now store files on the Bitcoin blockchain that will remain there forever, allowing us to once again write words in stone, which we haven't really been able to do for a while. And Taproot has drastically increased privacy, enabled the use of complex multi-conditional smart contracts, and thrown a huge spanner in the works of chain analysis companies, all while drastically increasing the privacy of the Lightning Network. Now, Bob doesn't know any of this, because the Bitcoin that he learnt about is the old Bitcoin. The Bitcoin that we have today is the new Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin that we will have next year is the next Bitcoin. Sorry if that was a little bit of a rug pull, but it's the correct answer. See, because Bitcoin is not a product, it's a project, one that's undergoing constant and relentless work from some of the smartest people in tech from all around the world. And as a result, Bitcoin has seen numerous upgrades that has vastly expanded its functionality past what it originally could do. So let's take a look at some of the most notable developments in recent years so we can get a better understanding of just how much this thing is changing. First on the list is SegWit, which is short for Segregated Witness. Implemented in August of 2017, this update was the foundation of all the updates that followed. Before SegWit, transaction signatures were stored in the witness section of the written transaction, creating very bulky transactions, as well as causing some minor issues to do with transaction malleability, which is basically something that prevents something cool, which is Schnorr signatures, but we'll get to that. Putting transaction signatures inside the witness section of every single transaction was kind of like trying to put a massive piece of furniture through a very narrow door. SegWit segregated the witness data into a separate section, like disassembling the furniture, enabling more transactions to fit into each block. But this update had an interesting side effect in that it solved transaction malleability and enabled what we call Schnorr signatures, which is just a different algorithm used to create the digital signatures that you sign transactions with. But the cool thing about these signatures is that they can be added together to create new signatures, and there's no way of telling whether one signature is the result of multiple other signatures being added together, or if it's just one single signature. And this enabled the next major upgrade, Taproot. Launched in 2021, Taproot utilized Schnorr signatures as well as some other cool stuff to enhance Bitcoin's functionality and privacy even further. Previously, smart contracts on Bitcoin were quite data intensive. They used a lot of data and reduced privacy due to the contract conditions being written to the blockchain. And they were also quite limited in functionality in that one contract couldn't have too many conditions. But with Taproot, it enabled there to be 2 to the power of 128 conditions in a single smart contract. That's a lot, and you don't need to write them all to the blockchain. In fact, only the one condition that ends up getting satisfied in order to move the Bitcoin from within the contract actually has to be written to the blockchain. This makes all the transactions to Taproot addresses look indistinguishable from one another. You could make a transaction to a Taproot address, and there'd be no way for chain analysis companies to tell whether or not you were funding a Lightning channel, whether you sent it to a complex smart contract, or if you were just sending it to a standard public key, private key address, which is a massive upgrade to the privacy of Bitcoin. But as with most Bitcoin upgrades, it had an interesting side effect again, in that it made possible the latest and most controversial upgrade of recent times, ordinals, aka NFTs. So yeah, you can put your silly ape pictures on the Bitcoin blockchain now, if you so please, except unlike Ethereum, they're actually on the Bitcoin blockchain. They're not just links to an image stored on Google Images or something. And the fees don't cost thousands. Yeah, not only do Bitcoin NFTs exist, but they work better than Ethereum NFTs, and you don't hear a single mainstream whisper about it. No wonder Bob's clueless. Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing budget like Ethereum does. Now, these ordinals have been the cause of quite a lot of controversy in the Bitcoin space, but I'm not here to pretend to know what direction Bitcoin's development should take. I don't know what's best for Bitcoin, but what I do know is this. Charlie Chaplin lost that lookalike contest because he had shaved his iconic mustache. The judges did not try to imagine what he would look like a few months down the line once it had time to grow back. They just took what they saw on the day, compared it to their preconceived ideas of what Charlie Chaplin should look like, and then etched their decision in the stone of time. Don't do the same with Bitcoin, because much like Charlie's mustache, it grows too. A lot of public opinion still has Bitcoin losing the Bitcoin lookalike contest for just the same reason. They have their preconceived ideas of innovation and their preconceived ideas of Bitcoin. They don't take into account its capacity to grow and evolve over time, just like Charlie Chaplin's mustache did. Anyway, that just about wraps it up for this video. I hope you find it interesting. We do videos like this every week where we delve into a different topic about Bitcoin or the surrounding topics. If you think anything that I said in the video was stupid, let me know down in the comments, but please don't make fun of my Charlie Chaplin metaphor because I really liked it. But yeah, that's just about it. Thank you for watching. Charlie Chaplin? Really?